Hi guys, Bomber here. Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to do the 4th CCC. This week's theme was Heroic. You needed to design a card of hero rarity, and instead the next week this CCC, since some days ago was St. Valentine, will be St. Valentine's Day's card. So you need to design a card which has love as its theme or whatever correlated to that. And you can leave your submission in the Discord server. I will leave down below in the description the link to the Discord server. And without further ado, let's jump into the review. So, in the 5th and last place, we have Cutting Strings from Tesla's Monster. It's a power card, so it's the hero card of Sophocatro from Vespitole, obviously. It costs 7 gold, and it reads discard an ally, draw a card, and draw a card, as all Vespitole cards. And it also has a flavor text, which reads, sometimes you have to let a puppet die. So, definitely a pretty cool flavor text, but anyway, I gave this card 2 points out of 5 in design, and 1 point out of 5 in balance, for a final rating of 5 out of 15. And the reason why for those choices is, for the design-wise, I like the name, Cutting Strings, and also the flavor text really represents that also. And also the fact that you have to discard an ally to do a thing, so definitely for that reason it's a pretty flavorful and well-designed card. But it's the after effect, so the what it does after you discard an ally, which is draw a card. And it doesn't seem like something that you discard an ally, so you killed an ally to draw a card. What that actually really means. Usually the comparison for drawing a card in reality is to get knowledge or something like that. And by killing your own ally, you are getting knowledge. That seems a bit off. Probably if you killed an opponent ally and drew a card, that would make more sense, because you are gaining intel from killing your opponent and something like that, but then it wouldn't fit well with the Cutting Strings thing and also the flavor text. So definitely a miss on that point, but I'll give credit to the first part, so the name, the discard an ally, and the flavor text. So that's the only reason why I gave 1 point more than 1 in design. And for the rest, I will talk about balance, because the design is very much correlated with the balance on this one, because literally a card like this can't be balanced, because in Vespitole we have a problem, which is going infinite, and this card is really accelerates going infinite, because you can draw 2 cards with this card. And it's true that you may say, but you have to first play an ally and then discard it, so it's actually not +2 cards, but only one more, because you are discarding an ally. But that's not true, first of all, because when you play the ally, if it is a Vespitole one, which it will, we are not in a tournament context, so when you play an ally, you redraw a card, by definition of all Vespitole cards. So actually discarding an ally is pretty much beneficial than not, because when you discard an ally, the only weakness for infinite decks, for the allies, I mean, the only weakness of the allies in those infinite decks is that they don't cycle. And instead, with Cutting Strings, you can cycle back your allies even more. Actually, you can cycle them, and first of all, you couldn't. So probably Cutting Strings will discard an ally, then you can redraw the ally with this same card. And so you can replay, for example, the ally, and then the ally will probably can redraw the Cutting Strings, and so on and so on. So definitely a pretty threatening infinite combo, and I'm very worried about it, because we have really cheap allies in Vespitole, like for example the Serf, which is the cheapest. Then we also have Militia or whatever. And literally this card is too fast for going infinite, and probably it's not too fast, because infinite decks already are pretty fast, but it's too RNG. You could possibly go infinite on the very first turns, whereas for infinite decks, they are more like a combo and a slow one that it's not RNG, it's like they planned to do it. Instead, with Cutting Strings, you could eventually go infinite and you wouldn't want to, for example. And so for that reason, it's a pretty bad balance, and also for the design, this card can't be balanced for this design. And so that's the reason why for those choices. Then we have Hidden Passages from Laplace. It's a power card from Vespitole, so another time a Sophocatro hero card. It costs 6 gold, and it reads last 3 uses, feed the skull to attack weakest, ignore intercept, and draw a card as all Vespitole. It also has a flavor text, which is you made yourself at home in my families, yet only us know the secrets that lay within its walls. So definitely a pretty interesting flavor text. But anyway, I gave this card 3 points out of 5 in design and 1 point out of 5 in balance for a final rating of 7 out of 15. And the reason why for those choices is design-wise is because I find it pretty interesting that we have this feed skull effect. It's actually the very first time that we see something like this. We have seen the usual feed the food, which is the first resource that was meant to be fed on allies to activate them. Then we also have seen the feed the gold, for example with Apothecary or Charlatan, which is also really interesting because I like the fact that you can also pay gold to do abilities, and it very fits well with Apothecary and the Charlatan, a very Metris team. And I also like this fact that we can also feed, we have feed magic, for example, in idols for Dalamek or whatever. And so the only one which is missing is feed skull. And I like the fact that it will appear on Sophocatro, which is the hero of power. So definitely that's pretty interesting. And also the last 3 uses is also a very interesting thing, but we already have seen it in Synod. And it's true that Synod is on turns, so it actually lasts 3 turns, like for example all the Melris cards, the one that lasts some turns. And this card is a bit different because it actually has 3 uses. No, it doesn't last 3 turns, but 3 uses. So definitely also that's pretty interesting. But other than that, it has some cool potentials, but I feel that this card didn't make them shine. Sorry. And so that's the reason why for the 3 out of 5, which is a pretty average design. Like this card, it has pretty interesting mechanics, but then they are not done well, in my opinion. They could have been better. They could have been used better. And for the balance instead, I gave 1 point out of 5, and probably I was a bit too harsh on this judgment. But I feel like this card is literally too weak because you are paying 6 gold to have a card which literally do nothing, because it actually doesn't give you the skull, so it actually does not increase your economy or offensive or whatever. It just gives you this kind of utility effect, so that you can ignore intercept with your skulls, whereas you first couldn't. So that's really a pretty nice ability. But it only lasts 3 uses, and you are paying 6 gold for 3 uses, and then you have to redraw it to actually use it again, and probably you will not anytime soon. So for sure this card is too weak. Probably I would decrease its cost to 4, for example, and also increase its last uses for like 5 or whatever, because literally you are not gaining anything. You are just getting this effect to ignore intercept. And it's not even an ignore intercept and that's ignore intercept dot. No, it's attack weakest. So it will probably also target the board. And so there is not any potential on killing your opponent by ignoring any of its defenses, like for example Xalia in the tournament. So definitely this card is pretty weak in my opinion. And so that's the reason why I gave this card 1 point in balance. Could have also been 2. But I prefer going to 1 because really I think it's very, very weak. Then at the 3rd place we have Coop from Tesla's Monster. It's a war card, actually, not a power one, for Isadora. And it costs 7 gold, and it reads, until end of turn, your hero ignore intercept, and draw a card like all the Vespitole cards. It also has a flavor text, which reads, the old rulers are dead, only I can keep you safe. So pretty historic flavor-wise thing for Vespitole, for those who knows the lore of War of Omens. But anyway, I gave this card 3 points out of 5 in design and 3 points out of 5 in balance for a final rating of 9 out of 15. And the reason why for those choices is because pretty much this card is a little bit similar to the one before. it actually solves some problems, like for example, as I said, the card from before had only two less uses, two low uses, only three. For that, the effect is kind of a bit underwhelming. Instead, this card does not have usages, but it lasts on for the end of turn, which it's better and worse. It depends on the situation, because if you have a lot of power and or magic and you want to spend them for that turn, then it's great, because you don't have a limit and you can do whatever you want. Instead, if you, for example, want to do that more consistently and on more turns, then there could be times when you draw this card, but you don't want to use your skulls, and so this card is pretty much useless. And it's true that if you wanted to ignore intercept on some turns, you could pocket this card and then use when you want to. But that's a bit weaker than the first one, the one we seen before. If you want to use your skulls little by little on turns, then the card before was better. But anyway, I gave this card also 3 points out of 5 in design, because it doesn't have the cool, interesting things like the card before. But it is anyway interesting that, for example, in Ziadora also, it really fits well the Ziadora team, which your hero can attack, and so your hero ignores intercept, so definitely that fits pretty well Ziadora. But that I went not too high on design, because it doesn't have so many interesting things like, for example, the one before. It's also interesting that it's the first time we see an until end of turn effect on Vespitole. So that could be kind of new. For example, I imagine this card that it goes on the board until end of turn, and then you can redraw it. Or actually, like for example, the Sprintia we have from the Steam release, which by the way is today, so go and check it out. And it could also work like an effect like the Sprintia Due that spawns on the board, and then the card is actually shuffled in the deck. I probably will see that better, because you can actually recycle through it, so definitely better. And for balance, instead I went for 3 out of 5, because this card is strong and weak, and varying on the situation. Because having your hero ignores intercept, we have already an hero which has that ability, which is Xalia from the tournament. And we see in the tournament like how Xalia is very threatening, because he just has to get to 20 resources which attacks, and then she can kill you. So definitely that's pretty threatening, and for that reason I may believe that this card is too strong. But then I think that already the meta is pretty fast, so there is no point in having your hero ignores intercept at 7 cost. That would really slow you down a bit, and it's true that you will kill your opponent faster, because you have not to deal with your opponent board, but the 7 gold cost is pretty significant, and you will slow you down pretty hardly. For example, in Soft Eruption, you wouldn't want to run this card, because if you get to killing your opponent, it doesn't matter if he has a board or not. In Isadora, you probably run Lead the Charge anyway, and I know that this card is a replacement for the Hero Power, but in that regard, Lead the Charge is much better than this card. And so for that reason, I may believe that it's strong, but also I am saying like it is too weak in some occasion. It has some problems, like as I said, it's pretty uninteractive, because if you get to the resource which you need to kill your opponent, that's GG. But also is at a cost, gold point cost, which is very very high, and it's slow you down. So definitely it's balanced in the way that it is unbalanced. It is either too strong or too weak, and so for that reason it's not well balanced. And so I went for a 3 out of 5, because it is not balanced but not unbalanced, and so I went for an average rating. And then at the second place we have a Grand Finale from Superman. It's a Therox card, and it costs 7 gold. And it reads, destroy every non-coin card you have on the field, in your hand and in your deck. Attack 4 times for each one destroyed. Destroy after use, like all Mary's card. And it also has a flavor text, which reads, in the flames I retire. So definitely a pretty Theroxy flavor text, so that's really nice. But anyway, I gave this card 4 points out of 5 in design and 2 points out of 5 in balance for a final rating of 10 out of 15. And the reason why for those choices, for the design, is pretty straightforward. This card is really good because it's actually fine by itself, but it really works well with Terox, because with Terox it's really not like a grand finale, because by that I mean that with all the other heroes, your cards are destroyed and they are gone forever. Instead, with the Terox in particular, you destroy them, but Terox can save them with 0 power. And so that's the main core of those hero cards that I say that I would very much increase the design if the card worked well by itself, but it worked better with this hero, with this corresponding hero. And so this card really does well that thing. Instead, for balance, I gave this card 2 points only out of 5, because I believe that this card may be too strong. Because already, if this card does eat 3 cards, so if you have 3 cards in your hand, in your deck, or on your field, then this card is really strong already, because you're attacking for 12, for 7 gold, and if you see the ratio, 12 divided by 7, it's somewhat like 2, so you're actually paying 1 gold for 2 attacks, and that's a really good ratio, because for example the best attacking cards are the Waylay and the Ambush, and they attack 3 for 2. So that's like 1.5, not as close as 2 as this card. So definitely, and you have to have only 3 cards, and if you have more, that ratio only gets better. And also I think that this card may be toxic, because we already have Coupe de Grace, but Coupe de Grace is half the damages, and it does not destroy the card, that's true, but you don't really care, because when you play Coupe de Grace, you want probably to Coupe de Grace your opponent, as the card says, and so that's a win condition, a finishing move. So you don't really care about the grand finale destroying all your cards, because that's when you play the grand finale, you are going to win, and with grand finale you are going to win too fast. Because for example, I thought of a very toxic deck that could arise from all these, an Undermine coordinate grand finale deck. So you only need 5 Undermine on the field, or whatever other card, for example a Clever Planning, which is very cheap to get, and it will stay on the board. So those really cheap cards, and for example also the Undermine, which will slow down your opponent. And when you have 5 on the board, that's GG. You play grand finale, you destroy all the things, you attack for 20 or more if you have more than that, and that's really threatening. It's very, very powerful. Also, you could go for a more aggressive mid-rangey style, like for example you could run Brutus and poisons, like for example the 3-cost one, I can't remember the name, the Belladonna. And so those cards, and like a Born Terox, but a bit slower, in the sense that you have not instant speed cards, but cards that stay on the board, like for example Allies, probably only the Brutes or the Poisons, which are slower but they will persist on the board. And the fact that then they will give value to the grand finale makes them better options. And so the core of this argument is that the grand finale is really too strong, in my opinion. And so for that reason it worked well in design, but not as much on the balance. And then on the first place, we actually have a tie. So the first one is Kozet from Rat Elemental. It's a Goetia card, so from Endazu, and obviously it's a Zalazir card. It costs 4 gold, and it has 2 charges out of 4. It reads on turn, hold or feed 2 health points, plus 1 charges, and on turn attack per 2. And hero gains health points. You lose 1 charges on this card, and it attacks per 2. And it also has 4 health points. And it also has a flavor text, which reads, blood for blood, life for life, power comes at a price. These are the words that all who deal with Goetia must keep close to their heart. So definitely a pretty evoking flavor text, and it really fits well the Goetia team well, so definitely well done on the flavor text. And anyway, I gave this card 4 points out of 5 in design, and 3 points out of 5 in balance, for a final rating of 11 out of 15. And the reason why for those choices is because, again, for design, this card is actually pretty interesting. It does some things, but they do all well. They are pretty interesting. We have the feed 2 health points, but it's different because it only gives this card the charge and not also the health points like all the other allies we have on Goetia, instead, if not Veil Warden, but that's different. You actually are healing him for health, so that's literally the same. Then he also has an effect which is both dependent on the Goetia team, like the life, but it is also activates anyway, so on turn attack per 2. But it also can work with the hero gains life, which is a little twist on the Goetia team. Like it always had to be with life, but spending life to do things. Instead, with this card, we have when your hero gains life instead of spending it. So definitely a pretty nice twist. And another time, this card is really fine by itself. It can be run on any Endatsu hero, but it works really well with Zalazir, obviously. Because with Zalazir, this card is automatically attacking double the times if instead of if it was on other heroes. Because on turn it is gaining a charge by default, but also your hero is gaining health points when on turn, because that's the Zalazir hero power. So you're actually attacking 2 more times every turn. So this card is like a 4 attacking for 4. Which is nothing that's wrong, because we already have Zamjigar for that reason. And probably that's a bit the problem with balance. This card, in the best possible scenario, so in Zalazir, it's at Zamjigar, which is a bit better than Zamjigar, because it does all the things that Zamjigar does. It doesn't cost you life to pump the Zamjigar, the Kozet, to be like the Zamjigar on the Zalazir. And also has some more synergies, because, for example, if you run a Lantern Scroll, I believe the name is, you're actually healing for 2, and so you can attack with the Kozet. And also, for example, if you have magic, you can heal yourself and feed you feed your health points, so this card gains a charge. Then you heal yourself, so your hero is gaining life. And so you lose the charge, you attack 2 times, so you spend 2 health points. Then you heal, so you actually spent only 1 health points, and this card attacked 2 times. So with this card, literally you have a way to convert all your magic in double the attacks. And we already have a card like this, which is the arcane rune, something like that, the symbol on the sand. I can't remember the name, but that card is it has only 3 uses, for if you're running Caliphate, and that's it. Instead, with this card, if you have 10 magic, that's actually 20 attacks, and that is already pretty fast. Probably I wasn't too harsh with this card. I could have gone to 2, for example, because it's really strong in my opinion, but it's not that strong because and that is already known to be pretty fast, and so with Kozet is not that unbalanced, because we already have some similar cards which are pretty much the same on how fast they are. But so I went too harsh with this card, but I believe that this card is too strong, and so for that reason I went a bit low on the balance aspect. And then, for the first place, we have Backstab from Superman, and it's a Birundel card, which costs 3 goals and reads discard strongest enemy ally, restock murder, and destroy after use, like all Metis cards. And it also has a flavor text, which is the only way to start a battle well, is when the enemy is already almost dead. So definitely a pretty nice flavor text, but anyway, I gave this card 4 points out of 5 in design, and 3 points out of 5 in balance, for a final rating of 11 out of 15. And the reason why for those choices is because, again, another time, this card works really well with the Byrondel, because with Byrondel, whenever you buy a card, you have a chance to restock another card, so you definitely want to buy cards with Byrondel. And this card does that pretty well, because it actually has an effect, but then it restocks another card. And so that works really well with Byrondel in particular, but also works well with any other hero. But as I said, a hero card should be fine by itself, but it should be better with its corresponding hero. And so that's pretty much well done. And also all the flavor of the card really is well done, because a backstab, it kills an enemy, so definitely pretty flavor wise on point. And so for that reason I went for 4 points out of 5. Instead, for balance, I do believe that this card may be a bit too weak, but not that much, and so for that reason I went for 3 out of 5 and not any lower, but not any higher, because probably the best comparison is seduce, which comes at the same cost, and it actually has an effect which is discard strongest enemy ally and gain a copy of it. So seducing an enemy could be worded like this. And think about it, it's better to gain that ally, which is most of the time is a warship or a Zamzigar full charged or whatever, so a very strong ally that you want to seduce. And probably I say that because those are the best scenarios, and probably you could say that, as I say, those are the best scenarios, so that you won't always get a seduce and use that. But the reason for what I say is because probably you run a seduce just to counter those decks. And if it is an ally deck which does not have so many great allies or whatever, you probably wouldn't want to seduce in the first place. And if you run into some decks that doesn't have very strong allies, you would not play the seduce at all, or you would play it because you didn't have anything better to do. So I will be taking into consideration those best case scenarios, because that's where the seduce may be played in the first place. And so with that said, you better prefer a Zamzigar full charged or a warship instead of a murder card, which most of the times on average is a waylay. So definitely you are getting a cool effect, which is to discard a strongest enemy ally, so dealing with the threat early on, and also gaining a bit more value with murdering card that can help you clear the recurring threat more consistently on the later turns. So definitely pretty okay with that. But as I said, probably seduce is better, and for that reason I believe that this card is not too strong, and for that reason I gave this card 3 points out of 5. So that's it for this video. Hope you liked it and find it useful. Be sure to leave down below in the description, I leave down the link to go to the Discord server and leave your submission. And by the way, that's it for this video. Hope you liked it and find it useful. Be sure to leave down below a comment to let me know what you want to see in the next videos. And as always, see ya!